only see your eyes. Think they got our number, but we ain't gonna lay down here and die. I said, hey, there's no surrender when you're standing on the line. I said, hey, there's no
It's been just 49 days since Diogo Pinto became your Porsche Esports Super Cup champion, but the wheels of time will wait for no one. Today, the road to crown a new champion will begin in the proving grounds. 6 weeks from today, 15 will rise as Porsche contenders one step closer to the Super Cup. It's time to get underway for the 2022 Porsche Road to Pro qualifying series presented by iRacing. Hello everyone and welcome to RaceSpotTV and welcome to the Road to the World Championship, where live from virtual Hockenheim we welcome you to RaceSpotTV and what is bound to be an electric 6 weeks of racing action. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, joined alongside by the ever wonderful Connery Maddock. Live timing and scoring powered by our friends at ATVO is available at RaceSpot.tv/timing3 to follow along with your favorite teams and drivers over the course of this qualifying series. Connery, you've seen all of these esports Super Cups over the years, but now with fewer spots on the line, the grid being reduced to just 30, and with a qualifying series schedule that will take us to some rather interesting tracks, it's going to be an interesting 6 weeks as we get underway here today.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely feels fantastic for myself, at least, to get back involved in some Porsche racing action here on iRacing. It's been a little while since I've been here, but I'm very thankful I'm able to join you for this one, Arjuna, to try and see which drivers are able to progress up into the upper echelons of iRacing here on the road side of things. And, well, you mentioned the circuits. Very interesting layouts that we're going to over the course of this season. Not really a Grand Prix layout on there, apart from, of course, our final round at Imola as our finale of this series. So it's going to be all pretty familiar. However, something's slightly going to be off about every single circuit we go to.
There's two ways of looking at it, right? The optimistic way that I'm trying to think about it is more corners or fewer distance between corners, maybe more opportunity to be side by side, more opportunities for lunges. The counter argument is maybe a little bit less draft, less opportunity to sling your way forward into one of these braking zones. But that's the schedule, but let's talk about the what that we're going to be looking at over the next couple of weeks. The top 15 from this year's Super Cup will retain eligibility for 2023. The 15 spots below that advance to our Contender Series live on the iRacing Esports Network later on this fall. Those final 5 drivers, positions 31 through 35, have got to do it all again. They will join those looking to advance their way forward, and after 6 weeks, 15 from this Road to Pro will join the 15 in the Contender Series, fight it out over another couple of weeks of racing action, where 15 will advance to make 30 in the Super Cup. The last couple of years, Connery, we've been reducing the number of cars in this championship level series. It means the spots become even more significant.
They become so much more exclusive as well. I'm a big fan of reducing the grid sizes. It allows us as commentators to be able to go into depth a little bit more about every single driver from the circuit, allows the fans to be able to engage with the race a little bit more as well, instead of just having a big old list of 40 drivers, then they might not know a good 15 or so of them. But yes, great decisions here by iRacing for changing out the format a little bit of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup and its associated qualifying series. I just can't wait to get started here, because even in this Road to Pro series, or rather this qualifying series, shall we say, there are still some names that everyone will recognize if you're into the pro side of road iRacing.
I mean, even the 5 that dropped out of the Super Cup and out of the Contender Series last year, I mean, Grabowski, Lombardi, Sedgwick, Lockwood, Walters, these are some of the staples at the top level of this Porsche Esports Super Cup, so very excited to see exactly how things will unfold here today. Qualifying is underway, drivers get the track to themselves, and a couple of attempts to go as quick as they can around this shortened version of the Hockenheim ring. We always know that when the pressure is on, the best rise to the top. It's currently the young Australian Dylan Burst with a 1:24.209 that has set the benchmark. But Connery, let's not beat about the bush. We know the games that have been played in the Super Cup over the last couple of years. It's good to be able to say brake dragging might not be such a big impact over the course of the qualifying.
Yeah, great fix that iRacing have been able to implement. It certainly levels the playing field here with regards to qualifying. So maybe we get qualifyings that are maybe a little bit more representative of each driver's pace instead of who can do the one trick better than the others. Of course, we want things to be decided based off of driver talent rather than what sort of tools they have in their toolbox, so to speak. But more qualifying times coming in. Last set back, going to the top of the order. The Danish superstar, I would say, doing very, very well in his local competitions in Denmark. He's a representative of the Fire esports team. He's certainly been a driver that I've been keeping an eye on for the past couple of years, because I do think he is something special.
And while Fire is new, like you mentioned, a lot of those drivers that they have in their roster are experienced in iRacing. Even Mikkel Gard winning the Skip Barber Racing Series here on iRacing a couple of months ago, taking a seat to Skip Barber Racing School in the real world, where he's been competing alongside the likes of the young Elvis Rankin as part of the Apex Racing team. Always good to see that crossover of virtual to real. 20 cars, lap times have been set. We still wait for 6 more. Melchers, Ladick, Riker, Monturo, Jensen, and Lamella, the 6 that we wait to see, as Gustavo Ariel will only go into 16th, Ladick up into 11th. The margin's always fine. 1/10 splits the top 6.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a theme throughout the season here, Arjuna. These drivers basically put in just as, if not more preparation than even a driver in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup does. That's the level that we're expecting out of these drivers, for them to progress throughout this entire qualification process. It's a lot of work, but you have to reap the rewards from it, and putting in the hours is the only way you're going to be able to do that. Here's Elias Riker heading his way out the final corner. The Finnish driver in the 14 heading his way across the line now, as one of our last-ditch qualifiers. Not a valid lap, though, so he might risk starting at the back of the grid.
Well, the thing is, he did have time to go for another lap, but he was already on his second lap and coming to the line, so ran out of attempts. Riker will start in the trouble zone. These qualifying races, even the main World Championship races, are fraught with chaos. They are fraught with danger. Riker, Montoro, Jensen likely to find out just how dangerous they can be. Andre Melchers, one of the RAG contingent that is in the field here today. We'll see a lot of strong teams in the mix. Valentin Mandenok for RAG up in 8th for the time being. Melchers, after switching over from Urano just a couple of weeks ago, will be the final car to set a lap time. We'll get our qualifying grid order locked and loaded for this first race of this Road to Pro Series. A new nomenclature for us to get used to in the comms box, something for you to get used to at home as well. Melchers through the final corner, hangs the rear end out with a 123.8 as the benchmark. A 124 Melchers to 12th spot.
Well, he would have been hoping for something just a little bit better than that with Melchers in the number 2 car. However, at least getting on the board, sets him up rather well for potentially getting things done once we go into racing modes here. But it seems like we have come towards the end of the qualifying session here. We just have to wait for the time to run down just that little bit further. Just to remind everyone, this is all split based off of iRacing. We had over 100 entrants into this one. This is the top split, and our SOF today is 8,557.
They might just get bigger from here as the I-ratings go up as we work our way through the course of the next 6 weeks. It's going to be electric here in this Porsche Road to Pro qualifying series presented by iRacing. Round 1 takes us to Germany, to the Hockenheim ring, to the home of the Porsche Experience Center, even here virtually on the iRacing service. But we're ready to get underway. We're ready to see who makes a statement in this first qualifying series race on the road to $200,000. Let's not dally around. Let's run you down through the starting grid for the first 30-minute race of 6 in back-to-back weeks. It will be Lasse Bach, pole position number 1 with a 123.838. Luke Bennett for Team Redline alongside him. Oskari Rene showing up for his new team. Kova, the black and red, starts inside of new recruit for Urano, Luca Kita. Simona Maria Marceno, the Italian stallion, and Mohamed Ibrahim will share row number 3. Rolling from 7th, Mads Johansson in the Apex Racing Academy car sees Valentin Mandelok to his outside. Dylan Burst, Christopher Dambeat. Experience and youth complete the rest of the top 10. Jaden Ladick for Monaco Esports and Andre Melchers 11th and 12th. While rolling from 13th, it will be Lauren Benzo with Alexei Nesov in the Urano number 5 alongside. Christian Lamella and Michael Yanni 15th and 16th for MSI and Apex, two teams that we know have worked together in the past, with Jamie Moon for Team 75, Bernard by SimRC, and Alexander Laritsen for SRC Movano on row number 9. Gustavo Ariel, highest I rating in the session, but down in 19th with some work to do. Kane Halliburton will roll alongside him with Dino Filippa, Dominic Blyer 21st and 22nd. Damon Woods, the final car with a lap time on the board. Elias Raiko is one of 3 that has some work to do, with Gabby Montoro and Matthias Jensen having to carve their way through the field. And Connery, as you look at the field of drivers, what stands out to you as we get ready to get underway?
Lasseback getting one over the Team Redline driver of Luke Bennett, who has impressed us in recent times with his performances, having to start on the outside of the first row this time around compared to Lasseback. Rena of Kita, of course, occupying row number 2 as we're about to go racing.
The road to the World Championship is underway. It's back with a good start, but Bennett immediately forces him to go defensive. The red line driver will challenge to the inside, side by side for the lead. Bennett will slide on through. It does seem as though all 26 cars have funneled through turn 1 all right, but you see the puff of smoke. The carnage ensues. To turn 2 we go.
Yeah, I think Montoro was involved in that. Benzo as well, and the number 19 falling towards the back of the order, the front of the field, getting themselves all liners there. But here comes the big run off the first sector.
Oh my word!
For Lasseback, as there's a big wreck at the back of the field. Oh, that's collected a good couple of cars as they come down into what we call the alternate hairpin here at this layout of Hockenheim. We don't go all the way down the back straight into the regular turn.
It's clumsy. It's, well, fraught with danger. We mentioned it earlier, but when the stakes are so high, when there's minimal consequences virtually, drivers are willing to be more aggressive. The 26 that start are down to 24 still rolling, 2 already to pit lane. Back looks to the outside as they fly into the arena section, but Luke Bennett is having none of that. Luca Kita in front of Simona Miriam Marchetto, and remember, it's a 6-week qualifying championship. You can lose the championship now, you very much cannot win it. Patience is going to be important. Surviving through the course of the 6 weeks and getting the points on the board week in, week out is what it will all be about. Luke Bennett will lead from Lasseback, Luca Kita, Simona Maria Marceno and Mads Johansson the top 5, but the field has very much been decimated. Some big names in trouble.
Yeah, Bennett with a mega start though. That's the benefit of actually starting P2 here at Hockenheim. It does get you, put you on the inside for the first turn, so as long as you get a good launch, and don't get me well, these cars in particular, these 992 Porsches, they are very, very tricky to start because of the clutch model that they have. It's something that the drivers will all have to get used to and all have to get nailed down over the course of this season. But Bennett seems to have perfected it, and he got a good launch off of the starting grid and now leads this race on the second lap of 22.
They are 30-minute races in effect. They're all targeted to be about 80 kilometers in length, not the split double race a weekend format that we have in the Super Cup, with the top 8 invert, of course, for qualifying, and then the top 8 invert for the race itself. Makes it a little bit different compared to what drivers will experience if they're able to work their way forward. Dylan Burst, Dino Filippa, they're battling on the edge of the top 20, and the young Dylan Burst gets shoved wide on the exit down in towards the stadium section, but at the front it's been nice and tidy. Plenty of replays for us to go and grab a look at because of the amount of destruction that we saw at the start of this race. Let's go ahead and begin by taking a look at the moment that, Connery, you mentioned with Gabby Montoro.
Yeah, it all happened towards the very back of the order as drivers feeling a bit desperate, trying to gain these positions early on. 2 into 1 doesn't go through turn number 1 for Montoro. He gets spat out towards the runoff area through that first turn. Dominic Blaja being involved in some issues as well in the middle of almost a 3-wide situation on the way through turn number 2, and just a bit of fisticuffs with cars on both sides. There's a big wipeout there for the 12 car, I believe, of Damon Woods towards the barriers.
I think I'm likely to say that's a racing incident. Now let's see if we can figure out what happens here at the hairpin. Ladek goes around in the Monaco Esports car, and it's just a traffic jam. It's a tight area to try and work your way through, and the bottleneck is what caused the struggles there. We rejoin live pictures. Not much has really changed, at least at the front of the field. In 20th, of course, Montoro working his way forward. Dino Filippa and Ladek, I think the battles continued and got even more physical there. But top drivers know when to stay out of trouble, Connery. It's something that defines the good versus the great.
Yeah, it does. And also there's an element of, for those drivers that didn't have a good qualifying, they want to be pressing on 110% from the very start to try and gain positions. And I think this is going to be a theme throughout this entire season with those cars in the bottom half of the field. We'll see a lot more instance back there than we would see in the front half of this field, for example, as that desperation for the scraps of points sets in for them. So it'll be interesting to see if that does continue on, but we're on board with Luca Kita at the moment, P3 in this event so far. Started P4, of course, and has not lost track of Bennett or back at the very front of the field. In fact, the vast majority of this field are still in one big train, so despite us not having the full-size back straight here at Hockenheim, it still seems that everyone's keeping themselves together.
And now that we've gotten through the early stages of the race, it does start to settle down very slightly. It's when drivers know they can get into the rhythm and see what drivers around them will do, where they can find this passing opportunities. About 5 seconds, splits 13 cars right now. By no means can you say that Bennett has been able to break away to the same extent that some of his red line counterparts might have been thinking they would do in the other race going on today, the 24 Hours of Spa, presented by Hoisingveld here live on RaceSpotTV. Of course, hosted here on iRacing as well. Yanni and Halliburton fighting for 12th and 13th with some separation in front of them starting to build. That's turning into a bit of a brawl with the ATRS machine of Halliburton at 25 blocking the road. Gianni, Laritzen, Jensen all tucked in behind. Tim, maybe an opportunity for Laritzen. Try and spring a surprise through the final corner. He will think about going to the inside. A little bit brave to get it done there. He will force Yanni off the road, whose teammate Jensen will squeak on through. Fisticuffs, well, all's fair in love and war.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a hip check there for Lawrenson for me. He did send it towards the inside. He was always going to wash up through the exit of the corner. And Yanni, well, he would either have had to slam on the anchors to try and avoid that instant, or make contact like they did and get forced wide. So it's not a move that I'm a fan of, running cars out of road or out of space, but it does indeed happen, not just here in sim racing, but in the real world quite notably as well. But at least for Michael Yanni, he's still in this race and doesn't have major damage.
Yeah, I was going to say, that did seem a little bit Formula One, my quarter-ish. We try not to, of course, see that here on the sim, where you can, it turns out, go too wide through cops. You just need some respect to be shown between you. They've done that in the real world this past year as well. But as we get into this championship, it's important to remember that this marks the start not just of the road to the World Championship, it's the start of silly season as well. I remember when Paul Smith and myself were looking at the 2020 Porsche Esports Super Cup qualifying series, the standout to us was Charlie Collins, at that time part of SimRC. By the time the qualifying series had come to an end, though, he had joined up with Coanda, and the Welshman has been firing on all cylinders since then. Someone like Luca Kita Connery has already joined up with Urano. He's set out his stall. He knows where he wants to be. For other drivers, the series is not just about getting the black license. It's about putting yourself in the shop window to maybe get picked up by a bigger team.
And that's so important because those bigger teams are always looking for their next big star. You know, it's so important for them to always keep their eyes open, looking at these qualifying series, looking even at some of the top leagues as well, the privately run leagues here on iRacing, just to make sure they're not going to be left behind by someone else picking up some fantastic young drivers and developing them into mega talents. You know, this is just the situation that we're in now with sim racing. It's not too dissimilar to other esports either. So as the sim racing becomes much more professional and much more money and sponsors are on the line in these events.
You look at that battle for the lead. Of course, we talk about about Luca Kita making the switch over to Urano. Ascari Rene, one of the many drivers leaving core sim racing. Ascari Rene has joined up with Kova in their black and red. Of course, we saw a couple of their cars in the Super Cup last year. Matti Siepela, Tumas Tatala. See if either of them are able to fight their way back through the Contender Series later on this year. Trying to now be joined by Ascari Rene. You mentioned as well earlier, this is the top split, the drivers with the highest I rating, but there's about 4 or 5 plus splits of this, Connery, and even those in second and third splits can look at having a road to the Contender Series. Last year, we saw drivers in second split accumulate points by winning race after race, and yes, it might not be as many points as winning the top split. It can often be just as many points as finishing 5th, 6th, or 7th here in this race.
Indeed it can. So, it is worth keeping a track on what happens to those second split races, because those can indeed influence how things will turn out at the end of this season, especially when the strength of the fields are just so high in this series. We have an 8,500 SOF here with 26 cars taking the starting grid. That second split SOF is going to be relatively high as well, so they're not scoring a small pittance of points down there. So that's certainly what I'm going to be looking at after this one, to see how the second split does, because it's unfortunate we can't have an alternate stream with the second split.
Never say never. Maybe we can do some red zone style coverage, just like they've been doing for the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying series for your oval drivers. Look at the damage to the front of the full-time Esports by TK machine of Gustavo Ariel as he fights side by side with Riker, the driver we saw struggling in that qualifying session. Two teams that are relatively new. Full-time Esports by TK, of course, partnered with the one and only Tony Kanaan. A big fan of iRacing, a big fan of sim racing, someone that's competed in our Porsche All-Star Series. But then you've got the Monaco Esports team as well, something, of course, that we have seen get quicker and quicker, especially in some of our other endurance races that we have here on iRacing. But it is always good to see newer and newer teams come to the fold. One team that you had pointed out, Connery, that we're not seeing here today, but we are seeing in the iRacing Spa 24 Hours, is some Scandinavian rivalries.
Indeed we are. Well, it's primarily based in Finland, I would have thought, with Havu and, of course, Kova Esports. But also, you've got Fira from Denmark as well. That can be counted in that region as well. And I'll definitely allow it. But I mean, with Finnish sim racing in particular, I would absolutely love to see a bit of a resurgence on them. Don't forget, they were absolutely dominant in the formative years of iRacing on the road side of things. You just have to say one name, Gregor Hutu, for me to prove that point. But over the last couple of years, they've kind of been there or thereabouts. They haven't completely disappeared whatsoever with the, I guess I might say something controversial here, with the downgrading that's happened to Glacier Racing, for example. We don't see them too often in a lot of races these days, at least on the ones that we broadcast. But it would be fantastic to see these teams get themselves back up there and break the mold in some sense, because I'm getting a little bit tired of seeing all the same names at the top of the order, the likes of Redline, the likes of Coander et al. I want to see some new names, some new liveries as well. Yeah,
speaking of liveries, that actually brings me perfectly to the point. I'm glad that, of course, Redline, their deep relationships with Max Verstappen taking one step further. Still called Team Redline, but instead of black and red, it's blue and red. You've got the Red Bull logo on the side of the car, Red Bull Drinks, not the Red Bull Racing Company. But it differentiates them slightly from that other black and red car that's slightly behind. Urano black and red is a popular couple of choices for cars, if we are being completely honest. But with 8 laps in the books, we're working lap number 9, still very much inside of this top 11. No panic stations yet. They're minding the time. They're waiting till they get to the end of this race. We're not even to the halfway marker, so plenty of opportunities. But having now seen how the cars are taking through the track, this Porsche 992 Generation Cup car, not many setup options, of course, but Connery, there are some cars that are looking a little bit more planted than others. I did notice Simone Maraceno, for example. He does like a looser car. He's enjoying that right now.
Yeah, looser cars, though, tend to eat up the tyres a little bit more as you're scrubbing the surface of those tyres across the surface, so they don't tend to do as well when it comes to long-run performance. And remember, we have 22 laps here, so it's not the shortest of races, so there might be some element of tyre conservation in this one. It's certainly not going to be a top priority for the drivers, but it's something to keep in the back of the mind here at Hockenheim. And we haven't really talked all that much about the track. We've said it's the ultimate layout, the National A layout, but we haven't said what's different about it. Basically, it's literally the fact that we don't go to the regular hairpin. We just cut the hairpin short, I guess.
So they go right here, basically. So you see where the track goes off to the left. That's the run into the much sharper hairpin. It should be noted it's a heavier braking zone because, of course, you've got more speed. It's a tighter radius corner. Opens up the opportunity for cars to defend a little bit easier, I think, now as well. Lasse back is really starting to put the pressure onto Luke Bennett as well. You mentioned tires, and I was kind of sitting here thinking, it's only a 30-minute race. Tires can't be that important when these cars can do sprint and endurance racing, depending on how you want to take these cars and go out and push them. Lasse back is starting to just figure that maybe there's an opportunity. Bennett very slow on the run into the arena section.
And guess which track Lasseback puts his hands on the trophy at the end of the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Denmark. It was Hockenheim as well. He's ultra familiar with this circuit. He knows what it takes to win at this circuit as well. And in the second half of this race, I expect to give him to give Luke Bennett hell.
Starting to break away, not just from fifth on back with Mats Johansson starting to struggle, Mohamed Ibrahim behind him, but even Luca Kita, Simona Maria Marcheno needing to find a 10th or two to stay with your race leaders as Lasseback picks up the intensity. We think back to 12 months ago as drivers worked into this qualifying series for 2022. It was with the older generation Cup car. As we worked through the winter, the new car came out and then it became center stage focus for this year's Esports Super Cup. A lot of these teams, all of these drivers will have now a lot more knowledge, a lot more baseline development having been already done so that they can leapfrog themselves a little bit further this time around. We always talk about the commitment to sim racing. I'm writing an article right now for VCO Send It, Connery, about the rise of the full-time sim racer. That is no more present than in this level of competition. The stat that always stands out to me, Brian Lockwood, the start of the 2021 Porsche Esports Super Cup, 80 hours of practice for just that first race of the season.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy the level of the commitment that these guys have, and it's become more common, obviously, in recent times as teams have had the finances to be able to fully fund drivers, so they don't have to work a side job or work a quote-unquote real job in the, and can commit more time to the sim racing. I saw a tweet recently. I think it's by one of the Coke Series NASCAR Coke Series drivers. I can't remember which one it was.
Oh, I know this
one. Tweets saying that if you're not spending 60 hours a week on sim racing, then you're not doing it right, or something to that effect. And that's the level of commitment you have to have for the top series here on any sim racing platform and any series.
Oh, it's going from bad to worse. Whoa. Kane Halliburton had already had a moment, and now at turn 2, it goes from bad to worse. I believe it was Gustavo Ariel in that full-time Esports by TK machine that got mixed up there. For Kane Halliburton, he will slide backwards. Ascari Rene has also lost a couple of spots since the start of this race. Qualified up in 3rd, of course. Down in 11th right now, tucked up behind Andre Melchers. Have to go and see what happened there. Kane Halliburton, it goes from bad to worse. He's reset to pit lane. So round 1 for Halliburton. Minimal points will be scored.
From on the edge of the top 10 to the very bottom of the order, having to serve himself a bit of a penalty there, getting swamped by the cars behind, and well, that's going to be all she wrote for Kane Halliburton. Very unfortunate, and well, there's nothing he could have really done about that. Gustavo Ariel just came in like a bat out of hell and took him out of the race. So there's going to be a lot of frustration there, but it's something that he just simply cannot control.
I forget the last time we did a broadcast together, Connery, but I love how we're basically on the same page with a lot of these points. You even stole the words out of my mouth there. I was going to use the phrase bat out of hell. Let's see what happened then to Halliburton. Oh, okay, so runs wide out of turn 1 will give you a slowdown penalty. That's automated by iRacing. It will tell you how much time to give up and how much time you have to give it up as well. Don't forget that. Maybe we can excuse Gustavo Ariel just a little bit for the lunge there, because he would have assumed that maybe Halliburton still had a little bit of that slowdown to be cleared. Look from up above.
Yeah, you can't ever be sure, though. You have to have your wits about you. You have to make reasonable decisions. Yes, there's a bit of a difference in speed on the entries to the corner. It's a hopeful lunge, but Ariel needs to be a little bit more aware of what's going on in front of him in that situation, at least if you ask me. Kane's going to be very hard done by that, and he's going to score very minimal points at the end of today. And like you said, it's only a 6-round season. That could be the moment, even this early on. That means Kane Halliburton doesn't qualify, which would be a big, big shame.
And, of course, 6 rounds, no drop weeks. So there very much is the pressure to deliver week in, week out. It's why I say in everything I broadcast, consistency wins championships. With the background we have today, it's not about winning a championship. It's about being allowed to fight for a championship. What a long way we've got to go until then. Of course, the big story at the start of the year was the 4 drivers that weren't going to be competing in the 2022 Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. Josh Rogers led the quartet of Coanda drivers that will be stepping aside. There was much hubbub at the time. What was Rogers and company going to be doing? Well, now we know. Coanda have formed as part now with Porsche, the Porsche Coanda Esports team. They'll be competing as the factory Porsche outfit in future sim racing competitions across of your sim racing universe. But it meant the title hunt was blown wide open. It was between the likes of Sebastian Joe, Kevin Ellis Jr., and even Zach Campbell for a while. It was Diogo Pinto that stood up and stood tall, being crowned your 2022 champion. Connery, you saw the rise of Diogo in 2021. First in Williams, then becoming an independent driver, then competing in the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Deutschland, eventually fighting with Maximilian Benecke, joining Team Redline. What a rise it's been since that moment.
Yeah, and it was an incredible season of racing for Diogo in that 22 Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. He only finished outside the top 10 once, the main race at Spain, and from that point forward, podiums galore. Only got one race win over the course of that season, but if you only need one race win and still win a championship, you know exactly how consistent you've been with those top placings.
It's not like the NASCAR Cup Series where a win basically is what you need to be allowed to fight for the championship. I like it. Again, consistency wins championship, and consistency in being smart. A lot of times these top-level sim races have got the best pace, speed that you can imagine. I definitely cannot even compare with a lot of them in terms of the speed. Sometimes, let's be honest though, Connery, we were talking about this before we went live, there is some questionable racecraft.
That can be, and I think I've already covered it already, especially for those drivers at the back of the grid. But remember, this is still a qualifying series. These drivers, a lot of them may not necessarily know how to race on this level. They might have done it in high SOF official races, or maybe some of the leagues that they've been in, but they've always been trying to fight near the top in a lot of those circumstances. Some of them are not quite used to running mid-pack or back, and that's quite a change to try and get used to if you're one of these quote-unquote alien drivers that are always looking for podiums in every single race you enter.
I feel attacked because my ego could not cope when I got to these levels. I'm not saying I was ever the best sim racer, but a couple of years ago when I was still actually racing, my rig wasn't gathering dust, I was in a handful of these endurance leagues. I did my one and only top split effort. My ego got very much dented as it tried to make all sorts of racing driver excuses for why I was not the Porsche Esports Super Cup champion. 7 to go, still no moves at the front of the field, but it is a 4-car train that has broken away from Johansson, Ibrahim, Mandenup, and Dan Beats. Back has been unable to apply the same sort of pressure that we saw from him even a couple of laps ago. Bennett somewhat settling now into the late stage rhythm.
The shortened back straight isn't helping. If we were running the full layout, Lasse would have been able to get close on multiple occasions. Oh, we've had a little bit of an instant, a little bit of a barge there from Mohamed Ibrahim. Door-to-door contact. And, we'll have to see exactly what triggered all of that one, because Mads Johansson dropped a position there in that number 10 Apex Racing Academy machine. That one was a little bit confusing. I'll look back at my view as well. Yeah,
I think we're going to have a closer look at exactly how that happened. Now, Mohamed Ibrahim not running any sort of livery. That is the stock default Porsche livery that you get if you join up with iRacing. However, if I remember correctly, and again, there's so many people in sim racing that you're going to have to excuse me, but I do believe Mohamed Ibrahim is part of the BS Plus competition team, one of India's premier talents right now. I am totally not biased. I totally do not want to see an Indian in the Super Cup for 2023. Let's take a look here, Connery. What do you see?
Well, let's have a look at it. It's quite far back for Ibrahim. Washed up through the middle of the hairpin. Another hip check in this race, this time to Mads Johansson. Let's take another look at it. We're on board with the car that's basically acting as our cameraman behind Valentin Mandanach. There's the Sens, there's the door barge, as I said here on the live pictures, and Ibrahim is through. Again, it's kind of similar to what we saw through the final couple of corners earlier on in the race. However, there was no escapade into the runoff for Mads Johansson, so I guess that is a little bit more fair than running a driver out of road.
There was a significant lack of apex hitting there for
Yeah, that's true.
Mohamed Ibrahim. I will point that one out. I would be a little bit aggrieved if I was Mads Johansson, but I'd also point out that Johansson had been losing track of those in front. We'll now watch the lap times to see if Ibrahim can maybe even close on Marcheno with the gap just 1.6. Don't count out that 23 car from maybe working forward, and we've already seen that he's willing to get the elbows out as we wind our way down. This time at the line will be 5 laps to go in this first round of the Porsche Road to Pro qualifying series presented by iRacing. Oskari Rene will jump in front of Alexei Nesov as they battle on the edge of the top 10. Alexei Nesov gets punted into the kitty litter.
Indeed he does. Trying to run his competitor closer around the outside, but for me, Rene's not left enough space on that exit curb for my liking, and has been able to, get himself ahead and end up into the top 10. Of course, Rene, he did start 3rd place here in this one, so he's on a little bit of a recovery drive himself. We're having another look at it on the replay here. And yeah, you got to be a little bit more courteous than that.
I think he tries to leave a space, but he doesn't leave enough, as Johansson will lose another spot. This time it's the Frenchman Valentin Mandenac that tries to sweep around the outside through the stadium section. They will work. Mandenac has the inside. That should be locked and loaded up into 6th position, and now 1.5 back from Ibrahim. His next target up the line. Seen plenty of racing so far, and Oskari Rene, I think he was trying to leave a car's width, failed to leave a car's width though. We will leave it at that one. Rene gathers foothold though, at least for the time being, inside of the top 10. Still, no movement inside the top 4. Connery, if you are Lasse back, Luca Kita, even Marcheno, do you maybe think, we've got some good points on the board, let's not risk it, with still 5 races left to go?
It's an option because, look, it's the top 15 that go through to the Contender Series. Ooh, back just has to be careful. He's lost a lot of ground here, actually, and now Kita locked onto the back of him. Decides to back out of the throttle, though, on the way in towards turn 2. It's stacked up these guys for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, though, so maybe that is the match that has lit the flame, and maybe we can get some action going here at the very front of the field. Bennett's going to be appreciative of it if he can break away.
And while there hasn't been the wheel-to-wheel, side-by-side action at the front, this is one of those races where the stakes are so high, not monetarily directly, but the opportunities that will be presented if you could work your way stage by stage, race by race, towards the Super Cup. It's the race where you know every move might be worth $200,000. It's all about being smart and making sure you don't make any enemies in round 1, because if Lasse back has any sort of contact with Luke Bennett, you know Team Redline will be around to maybe return the favor in the next 5 rounds of the championship. Sliding backwards still though, Lasse back now half a second trailing on Luke Bennett, who will lead us to 3 laps to go. What a control drive it's been so far. And he talked about the difficulty of getting this car off the line at the very start of this broadcast, Connery. I would not be shocked if that defines the story of this qualifying series.
I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever either. Bennett through turn 1, he's been solid over the course of this race. He had a lot of pressure piled onto that Porsche by Lasse back, especially in the early portions of this race, and well, recently as well, but he's dealt with all of it and now has a little bit of a buffer zone back to Lasse back, as that's a bit of a tongue twister. 6.5 tenths of a second is the situation there between P1 and P2. I do have to give a shout out though to the driver, Matthias Jensen, the number 16, back in 12th place at the moment. He started pretty much at the back of the grid. He's gained 14 spots to grab that 12th place.
He is by far the hard charger so far today, and no one else in double digits for points gained. There are a couple who will be slightly sad to say they have lost a double-digit position so far. Back is Back is the hit single to be released by RaceSpot Productions later on in 2022, because yes, Back is Back and seems to at least have found a groove. 3 minutes left to go. They're running out of time. They are running out of ground if they want to try and put any sort of pressure on Luke Bennett. I do think it's all now just about damage limitation, ensuring there are some good points on the board moving forward. Back loses some more ground through the final sector. The gap grows 6 tenths to Luke Bennett.
Yeah, Bennett's trying to get away with this one now, leaving the rest of them in his tyre smoke. Well, hopefully there won't be any tyre smoke. That'd be a major problem for Luke Bennett at the moment, but currently no problems about maintaining the race lead of this event. Here's the onboard with Mohammed Ibrahim, who is closing in still on this train, going on for second place at the moment. It might be too little too late for Mohammed Ibrahim, but we'll see what happens over the next, lap and 2/3, I would guess, in this situation, to see if he can solidify himself inside the top 4. Marciano's really having the back of Kita now as well.
I think I agree with you. Ibrahim has left it a little too late, but the 23 car coming into this race, that meant out of the 26, his I rating placed him 23 of them all. It's good momentum. It's going to be good I rating for him as well to ensure that he makes these top split races over the rest of this qualifying series. Plenty of positives to take out for Mohammed Ibrahim, even for Valentin Mandanuk and those behind him as well. But through the arena section, for the penultimate time, it is still Luke Bennett that leads by 0.7 of a second. Lasse back sits comfortably in front of Luca Kita, who feels the pressure not just from Marciano, but Mohammed Ibrahim, who's closed even more. 1 lap to go here in this first race of this qualifying series.
Let's see if there are any lunges here on this final lap then, shall we? I don't think I'm really expecting it inside of your front grouping, but it would give us some good entertainment for the final lap of this race at Hockenheim. Not going to expect it down in towards turn number 2. It just compromises you too much coming down that back straight, and you risk getting swarmed by other 3rd or 4th parties behind that can get themselves through that first sector in a little bit of a smoother fashion and gain that speed down the back straight. But let's see down into the shortened hairpin then. Here's the number 2 getting down the inside, or what will eventually be the inside, of Christopher Dambeats. He's no stranger to the top level of competition here on iRacing either.
It's a full second at the front. No battle for the lead. The battle is for 8th position as Melchers tries to get the elbows out to work his way and bully his way past former World Championship competitor in Christopher Dambeats. Up and under attempted by the RAG driver as they continue to fight side by side. The RAG yellow nose machine will nose in front and slams the door shut from Dambeats as they continue to fight. It will be Melchers that will hold on. The road to the World Championship is long and fraught with danger and filled with challenges. Challenge number 1 was the Hockenheim ring. Luke Bennett started in 2nd, but rose to the top immediately, and he will win race 1 of the Porsche Road to Pro qualifying series presented by iRacing. Step 1 to the World Championship has been taken.
Solid race there from Bennett. Solid race the entire top 4. I would have thought in this situation, scoring those much needed points to ensure they're in the top 15 at the end of this championship, but there's still a decent ways to go. It's sort of the duality of, yes, we're a short season, but we're still at the start of it. But yeah, fantastic stuff for Luke Bennett, and of course Team Redline as well, looking to get yet another competitor into the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. Like you said, they've made 1 step forwards with regards to that here in the qualifying series. Fantastic.
Even Christopher Dambeats will get some good points on the board, of course, for Team Redline heading out of the 2022 Super Cup. It was delight for Diogo Pinto, maybe a bit more of a struggle for some of their other drivers. I know Maximilian Benecke felt there was more for his speed than was reflected in the end result, down in 9th. Those are the only 2 Redline drivers locked into next year's Super Cup. There is some work to be done by the likes of Gianni Vecchio, maybe even Josh Thompson, as the final cars will come across the line here at the Hockenheim ring. Barney the Flagman has witnessed a rather quiet, just 30-minute race here. The 22 laps saw only 1 pass for the lead, but it was the defining moment of the race. Luke Bennett wins by 1 second in front of Lasse Back for the Fira Simsport team. Luca Kita for Urano will look to make 1 step forward and continue charging forward after holding off Simona Maria Marciano, while Mohammed Ibrahim locked on to the back of the top 5 at the end of the race. For RAG, Valentin Mandanuk looks to add a 2nd World Championship license to his resume in front of Mads Johansson, who dropped from 5th to 7th in the Final 10 laps of this race, Andre Melchers, Christopher Danbeat, and Oskari Rene make up the rest of your top 10. Down in 11th, it's going to be the Urano Esports number 5 of Alexei Nesov with Matthias Jensen carving his way up through the field, our hard charger plus 14 to sit in 12th when all things were said and done. Michael Gianni behind him in another of the Apex Academy cars, while Christian Lamella for MSI 14th, with Alexander Loritzen for SRC Mivano down in 15th. Elias Riker, Jamie Moon 16th and 17th, with Gabby Montoro, Dylan Burst, and Gustavo Ariel. Going to be slightly disappointed, Burst, with losing 10 positions after a decent qualifying performance for him. Also disappointed will be the Monaco Esports driver of Jaden Laydick. He lost 10 spots as well to finish in front of Dino Filippo, at least on the lead lap, but the fellow Monaco Esports number 19 of Laurent Benso finishes 4 laps down, in front though of Kane Halliburton, Damon Woods, and Triton's Dominic Blyer, who walk away with minimal points from round 1 of the qualifying season. We'd love to be joined by drivers to have a chat post-race, but doesn't look like that's going to be likely. So instead, I will look to wrap things up for this first round of the championship, Connery, by talking about what's next. We'll go to Silverstone, but we won't go to the full Grand Prix layout. We will go to the international layout. We've seen what touring cars can do at that layout here on RaceSpotTV, but with these 992 generation Cup cars, fewer passing opportunities, but more opportunities to bully your way through. Very excited to see what we're in for a week from today.
I think if I had to pick a short layout of Silverstone, International would be the one that I would go for. There's a few more overtaking opportunities there than compared to the national layout. If you're unfamiliar, the International, well, we use the same pit straight they use on the full GP version. However, once we get to Village, we'll cut in through the loop. We'll go straight on in the loop, and then we'll go straight on to the hangar straight to the final sector of the lap. So that's what the international layout is at Silverstone. I'm cautiously optimistic for it, Arjuna, in these cars at least.
And when I think about this track in particular, I think about the moments that we've seen here across the virtual world. And yes, it's, of course, the home of British motorsports. We've seen so many iconic moments here in the real world, but you know, the British Grand Prix just a couple of weeks ago, I have to make this point before we wrap up, but Connery, do you remember the end of 2020? We're live for the BMW Sim Live big final show. 3 wide through the final chicane, Joshua Rogers parts the seas. Lewis Hamilton did almost the exact same thing just a couple of weeks ago.
I'm glad you reminded me of that, because if I had both of those things in mind, well, at the end of the British Grand Prix when Hamilton did his stuff, I would have maybe put together a little bit of an edit and posted it on Twitter to show how similar the moves were. But yeah, I mean, we get that same portion of track here at the international layout. We wouldn't if we were at the national. But yeah, that's there's so many things, so many moves that can happen down into the Vale in particular, especially when you have a good gaggle of cars coming into there. Sometimes the sea does open up.
Well, that will be next Saturday, July the 30th. Join us here live on RaceSpotTV at 6:45 p.m. UTC for round 2 of this Porsche Road to Pro qualifying series. All the action live here on RaceSpotTV, maybe even multiple splits. We'll have to see how things work out over the course of the next 6 weeks. For now, though, step number 1 on the road to the World Championship is in the history books. It's Luke Bennett that will walk away as your race winner, but good points have been accumulated for those behind him. Now, though, it continues to get tougher. Drivers have to make sure they endure, they persevere the challenges that still lie in front of them in this Road to Pro qualifying series. Remember, 15 will emerge 6 weeks from today as Porsche contenders, 1 step closer to the Super Cup. There's still a long way to go, though, to the beginning of 2023 when we roll out once more for the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. For now, though, live on RaceSpotTV, for the team behind us, we thank you for joining us. For Connery Maddock and for myself, Arjuna Kangipati, delighted to have your company this Saturday. Remember, plenty of racing action with still a long way to go in your 2022 iRacing 24 Hours of Spa, presented by Heusing-Felt. We'll see you for that race. We'll see you next week as well. For now, so long and goodbye.